Good. Good evening and welcome to Virginia's Views and Vibes. Before we start tonight, kind of sad news. If you remember the K5 segment of Virginia's Views and Vibes, you'll remember Dr. Dominic Amara. Dominic lost his battle with cancer last week, but we will always remember him and the fun that we had doing K5. However, tonight, my guest is President of the City Council, former school committee man, and a candidate for mayor of Newton, Mark Laredo. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And you're so busy. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Happy to do it.
So tell me a little bit about you. Something
Sure.
you want everybody to know, aside that you are an impeccable dressman. You dress well.
I'll take that as a compliment. So look, I grew up here in Newton. I went to Cabot, Bigelow, and Newton North. My wife and I moved back here 34 years ago. We've raised 3 kids here, all of whom went to Ward, Bigelow, and Newton North. Our daughter-in-law went to Cabot, Day and Newton North, so we have strong Newton connections. I've been very lucky. I think this is a wonderful community. I've had the opportunity to give back. I was in the school committee for 8 years, including as chair. I'm on my 14th year on the city council. I currently serve as a president. And I really love the work I do on behalf of the residents of the city. But I'm not a career politician. I have a day job. I'm a lawyer. I have one of the founders of my law firm in Boston. And I'm prepared to give all that up because I think I'm the right person at the right time to help bring this city together. It's really important to me that we build on what I think is a great community, make it even better. And I'm determined with a strong team in place because this is really a team job to do that. And that's why I'm running to be the next mayor.
Well, I have to say this. We lived in Newton up until 6 years ago. So I know well you work. And I'm happy you're running because you're always fair.
Thank you.
You always take the time, whether we agree or disagree, to explain things to everyone, to me. And we went through some issues. I mean, you were with us for 9/11 and things like that. And I appreciate that. And I think that speaks volumes for you. Because you are a busy person. But you take the time to talk to everyone and address their concerns. And I think that's a wonderful trait.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
But you mentioned school committee. So one of my favorite people in Newton is Anna Nolan. And she's been with you now 2 years?
2 years.
So what's her vision? What's her plans for improving on, I think, one of the best public schools?
So Dr. Nolan's terrific. She's been in place 2 years now, and I think she's doing a number of things she's doing a lot of things that I think are great. But one of them is to make sure that we're standardizing curriculum across the board, because you don't want a kid at Bowen learning something completely different than a kid at Franklin, completely different from a kid at Cabot. Now, it doesn't mean you erase teacher individuality. You and I probably all remember the best teachers we ever had. Some were the most creative people. So you want to allow for that creativity, but at the same time, you need to make sure that you're really standardizing your curriculum. I also think it's very important to have academic rigor in our public schools, and there's a balance there. You don't want your kids so overworked that they develop all sorts of mental health and other stress issues. I think you gotta be very cognizant of that, and you want well-rounded kids. But schools are first and foremost an academic place, and that's where you start. With that said, I happen to believe that extracurricular activities are extremely important for the development of kids. I don't care if you play football, run track, or in the theater, do debate, or do Ligerbots. It really makes no difference. The key is that as a kid, you're finding a space in 2 fairly large high schools where you can belong, where you can make friends, where you're engaging in an activity that's important. Last piece, every single kid in a school building ought to feel safe and secure.
Yes.
And what does that mean? It means that we don't tolerate bullying. I happen to think we're far better at that now than perhaps when I was in school. It means that there's an adult or more than one adult that every kid feels they can go to in a building and talk to. That it's a safe place. That it's a secure place. Because if it's safe and secure, you're encouraging all kids to be able to learn. And that's critically important.
It is. And only because you're talking about your school committee, how do you think you kind of repair or catch up with what happened during COVID for the school committee?
You know, this is an ongoing challenge for Dr. Nolan and the school committee. It's hindsight's always 20/20, but at least in my view, we should have gotten back to school much earlier than we did. Again, hindsight's 20/20, but we're feeling the effects of it now. And if you go talk to a teacher in the elementary schools, for example, they'll tell you that their kids are really behind, especially socially and their ability to interact with each other. In the middle and high schools, lots of issues with mental health, which has been really a problem throughout our society. It's not unique to Newton, but we are going to need the resources to deal with that. I'm confident we will. But it's taking work, and it's going to take more work.
Yeah. I know that the police, their resources have allowed for them to be involved with this piece of it as well. Anything you can tell us about now, what they're doing, how parents can kind of get in touch with school committee or the principal or Dr. Nolan to say, I think my child, I question if they're feeling okay or having some difficulties or showing signs of depression. It does happen, and it's everywhere. It's not exclusive to Newton. So going forward, how will that be handled? I mean, what's the steps if a parent wants to get a hold of their guidance counselor or Dr. Nolan's office?
If any parent ever feels that their child is having any kind of difficulties like that, they need to reach out immediately. Probably the best place to go is if in elementary school, the elementary school social worker or psychologist or the principal, although certainly a classroom teacher is a place to start. At the middle school, it would be a guidance counselor. It would again be the school psychologist or social worker, the assistant principals. And at the high school, there's a similar group of folks. Of course, in the high schools, you have classes that are split along subject area, so maybe better off going to a guidance counselor, for example. But the most important thing is any parent who feels that their child is having difficulty should not feel alone. They need to reach out. And I know that from Dr. Nolan on down, we have folks in the school system who are there to help. They're trained to help, and they can do that.
That's a great answer. That's great. Because there was a lot of that, COVID or whatever now. There are a lot of children and students suffering. It's sad.
And look, again, it's not unique to Newton.
No.
It's really something that's a phenomenon that's going on all across the country. But we should not be afraid to seek help.
Right.
That's the most important thing. If you need help, seek help.
Yeah. The other big question is, you know this, development in neighborhoods and the streets and all of that. The development, though, what I read that you're going to do is you want the neighbors and the neighborhood involved in this. Tell me about that, because that's excellent.
So, look, we are going to develop in the city of Newton. And I tell people over and over and over again, you cannot be stagnant as a city and hope to thrive economically. It just doesn't work. And I chaired the land use committee for 4 years, including when we did both Austin Street and Trio, which were very controversial projects. One of the things I took great pride in was I made sure that the hearings we held as we were trying to work through those projects were fair, gave people an opportunity to be genuinely heard, and try to incorporate their feedback into making better projects. I voted for both projects, for example, and I voted for Northland. Whether you agreed or disagreed with my vote, and people did, which is fine. You sometimes make decisions not everyone's happy with. I was most proud of the fact the process worked well. And I never want someone coming back to me and saying, your processes were unfair. I may not have liked your ultimate decision, but the methodology you used to get there was important. So why do I say that? You know, I live in a dead-end street. It's really easy for me to tell someone who lives 4 miles away, sure, no problem with the very large development right next door to you, because it's not affecting you personally. Right. But that's not right. And what I tell every single developer and every single developer's lawyers, early on, when you're formulating your project, go talk to your neighbors. It doesn't mean the project won't get done.
Right.
But it does mean they may say something as simple as, can you move it back 3 feet?
Right.
Or can you put a fence up? Or can you put some screening here? Or I'm really worried about trucks coming in the middle of the night delivering goods. Can you limit that? There are a myriad of things that you can do that will not affect the financial feasibility of your project, but make it better for those most affected by it. And I think that's just a common theme that we in city government have to encourage on a regular basis. Go talk to people. And you also then, people tend to be very fearful of the unknown. And they're very fearful when people come in and say, you should do this for the greater good. Again, it's easy to say that. Far better to have those conversations up front.
I lived in Ward 4, and I'm sure you were on the board when we did the incinerator, the landfill, and we had a strong neighborhood group. But we knew that there was going to be something developed there. They have to,
right?
For many reasons. But the city council really made it a point, they were aldermen at the time, to work with us.
Sure.
They truthfully listened. And I think that's important to have a strong neighborhood group, a strong neighborhood group that understands there's going to be something, but they feel they can have input in what's going to go there. We ended up with a two offices where the incinerator was, and then we went across the street to the landfill. And again, because of the city council, the aldermen, we were able to get a 52-acre landfill that was, pretty messed up, and give 25 acres back to us as passive recreation. Now there's, I think, solar panels on it. But again, the city council worked with the neighborhood. And I agree with you. There has to be development. There's not going to be abandoned buildings. You have to do something with them. But I like the idea that, and I'm sure you do, and I'm going to let you talk after I get off my soapbox, but I like the idea that the city council and the aldermen worked with the neighborhood and heard us. And I think our little section of Ward 4 did pretty well.
You know, I really don't like the characterizations of NIMBY or YIMBY. Yes in my backyard, no in my backyard, because what they do is they pit people against one another. And I really don't like that. We do far better if we understand we're going to do things, we work together, we try to address concerns. Those are the large projects, but we see also neighborhood concern on the smaller projects. In particular, someone takes a fairly modest house, knocks it down, and builds out to the absolute lot line. I saw one in Ward 3 not long ago where not only did they build to the lot line, but before we put in a new city ordinance about how much fill you could put in, they'd put in a tremendous amount of fill and then built on top of that. Now there wasn't, to me, an example of a project that wasn't adding a single unit of housing. It wasn't adding to the housing stock, and it really was something that did not fit in at all with the rest of the neighborhood. You could have and should have, in my mind, had a process where you would allow someone to add on to that house. You would allow them to expand it. You want to encourage it, but not to the point where you're overwhelming the property of every immediate neighbor. Again, it's a balance and some fine-tuning that we need to do.
I went through the list of how many people live in each city and town in our area it goes from anywhere from Boston, which is 675,000, 146 in Cambridge, Watertown's 24, 72. We're at 84 now?
We're actually close to 90 right now.
Really?
Yep.
And is the cap 100, or is there no cap?
There's no cap. I mean, look, we are going to have some logical limits on growth.
Yeah.
We don't have any more land, for example, to build an Oak Hill Park with lots of single-family homes.
Right.
The land just doesn't exist. Yeah. Occasionally, some parcel will come up. You may be able to do that. You're much more likely to see some combination of infill, where you're putting a two-family or three attached units where maybe one existed, or some of the larger projects like Riverside, Trio, Northland, where you're getting a fairly large parcel of land, and you can put, right now it's apartments, but you could put apartments or condominiums there. That's where you're going to get more of your population increase. Now, with the MBTA Communities Act and law right now, it's hard to say how that development is going to work. It's been slow so far, in part because folks in the real estate industry are facing a lot of difficulty with financing, high interest rates and high construction costs. But I do expect some of that will start to take place in the next few years.
And then because now I'm kind of saying, what's the schedule for this? Because Washington Street is sort of, it's not as big as it was. It's not 2 lanes on one side and 2 on the other. We drove down there, so it seems like it's all pushed together, and traffic is going to be very congested there. Are we hoping for more public transportation, like you mentioned? Public transportation, less cars, or how is that going to all happen, and how do you think it will end up with development, housing, maybe 10,000 more people, and trying to keep the streets moving?
Look, I think, number one, Washington Street is in very much of a pilot construction type mode. I will tell you some things I like about it and some things that I think need improvement. Sunday morning, I took my bike out for a ride in Newton. I rode around the various villages, and I took a ride down Washington Street in the new bike lane. I've driven by there, but I hadn't biked there. It was great. Yeah. If you're if you're a bicyclist and you're a kid going from West Newton to Newton North High School, that now is a very safe route. Flip side is, I think the current configuration of cars, drivers exiting their cars, for example, when they've parked, does not look like it's working very well yet. I'm concerned somewhat about the road zigging and zagging rather than being straight. It's a pilot. We need to let it play out a little bit. The bigger challenge for me, if I'm elected, is it's a pilot, but we have no money to make this permanent. Wow. So what do we do in 2, 3, 5 years for a project that might cost 15, 20, 25 million to implement, and we simply don't have the money to do that? Yeah. And are we willing as a community to keep it in, quote, pilot mode or not? I don't know the answer to that. I want to see how the pilot works first. Yeah. All I'll say there is we do need to be patient with pilots. They're there for a reason. At the same time, we can't be afraid if something's not working to fix it quickly. Yeah. And that would be what I'd encourage our people to do and who are working on the project right now.
So now I have to ask you, override. Do you think that Newton's headed for one? A lot of cities and towns are. This is not unique to Newton, but.
So look, I have been very clear about where I stand on overrides, and as you know, your viewers may or may not. There's 2 types: the debt exclusion override, where you say I want to build a specific building. We're going to need a new police station, for example.
Oh yeah.
Okay, if you've been to our police station, it is in horrible condition. Yeah. That's going to be a very expensive project. Are we likely to have to go out for a debt exclusion override to fund that? The answer is yes. I think we're going to need debt exclusion overrides to do some more of our elementary schools. Newton South, the middle schools need a fair amount of work. There's 2 fire stations that still haven't been done. So those are the types of things you might have to go out and ask for debt exclusion override for a particular project. The harder one is the operating override. And what I tell people is there's 3 factors you've got to have in place before you can even begin to go to the voters and tell them you're recommending it. 1, you've got to have specific improvements that you're going to deliver. What's going to be not just status quo, but if the taxpayers are asked to give us more money, what are we doing better?
Yeah.
It might be new playgrounds, it might be streets and sidewalks, it might be commitment to certain things in the schools. It's an improvement.
Yeah.
Second piece, you've got to have the right economic conditions to do it. If you're in a recession, if you have high interest rates, if you're seeing a lot of folks laid off because of some of the federal budget cuts, something that we need to be very concerned about here in Newton, because so many of our folks work in healthcare and education, higher education, that's a concern.
Yeah.
If you're sitting on a pile of money because you have all this free cash, it's hard to go out and sell to the voter you need that. So you got to time it right.
Yeah.
Third piece, me. You've got to trust that I've done my job as the mayor and spent your money wisely.
Yeah.
That I've been prudent about how I spend money, that I keep my promises about how I'm spending money. If all of those factors are in place, yes, I'd go to the voters and ask for an override.
Yeah.
But I won't just knee-jerk say, we need an override, we need one every 2, 3, 4 years. It's not how it works, and frankly, you won't get it.
Another big question that it comes up every once in a while is the size of the city council, the board. What are your feelings on that? I mean, random question, I apologize.
No.
But, you know, it always comes up, there's too many, what's a good number kind of thing. What are your thoughts?
So I opposed the last effort to change the charter. And it was not because I felt that the council could not be smaller to function effectively, but it was because there was a proposal to eliminate all ward councilors and have everyone run at large. And I didn't like that. And I'll tell you why. If you're new to politics and you decide you want to run for office, you can run for ward councilor, theoretically at least, without a whole lot of money. Now you got to get out and knock on a whole lot of doors in your ward, but if you get out there, you can knock on most, if not all, the voters' doors. You can talk to people directly. You can make your case. And I think that's really important that the residents of each part of the city feel like they have someone on the city council supporting them. You know, whether we ought to be 24 councilors as we are now, whether we ought to be reduced to 16 with 1 at large in 1 ward, I'm open to all of that. There is some benefit to having a somewhat smaller council. I think it's very hard for people to understand who their councilors are at times. I will say, though, that I have found there's a lot of benefit in a larger legislative body because it really allows for a variety of views to be presented. And I, at least, have benefited from that variety of views. I listen to my colleagues, and when I go to debates, sometimes I've decided which way I'm going to vote, but there's plenty of other times I think I was going to vote one way, and I listen to my colleagues, I voted differently.
Yeah. That's important.
Good.
No, it's
important.
Very
important.
And I'm seeing 5 minutes, so the last 2 questions are kind of two-part. The first one is we do a flag raising for Italian Heritage Month, and we've done it at City Hall for 5 years. The IAA, it's an organization I'm a part of. I'm national chapter president. We're a little concerned that because of the latest crisis in Nonantum, that we may not be able to do that again, that we may be denied that request. As incoming mayor, would you support us in doing the flag raising again?
If it's something we've been doing for years and years and years, I happen to think traditions are really important.
Yeah.
And traditions are important for across cultures, across religions, across nationalities. We all have our own heritage, our own cultures, our own symbols that we're proud of. I think that's very important. And I think one of the things I've really liked about living in Newton is we are a very broad mix of folks here. much more than in some other typical suburban communities. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think we ought to honor people's traditions as much as we can, and we ought to be respectful of one another's traditions.
Absolutely. So there's only probably about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to let you have the last word, and I want to thank you for being supportive of No Nantum. So I'd like you to talk about it in what would maybe what you would have done as mayor differently than what happened. But you get the last word, and thank you again for supporting.
Well, I don't want to dwell as much as I love the festa and all the things that go along with it. Suffice to say, I would have done it very differently in connection with that. There's a lot of things in life, if they're working well and they're not broke, don't fix it. And I think the line painting is a perfect example. And if for some reason you believe that you have to do something different, figure out a way to do it that keeps the traditions. Yeah. Don't make it overly complicated. Look, on November 4th, I'm going to ask people's vote to be the next mayor at noon. I think there's a great city. I'll look forward to leading it, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be on today.
Well, you have about a minute, so if anything else you want to add, please do.
You know, I'm determined. I've been out there knocking on a lot of doors, okay? I've been meeting people all over the city in a variety of places. I'm going to be doing that for the next 4 months, and as your mayor, I am going to do that. I am determined to meet with as many people as possible in this community, but not just me. I'm going to have a senior team in place. We're all going to be doing this, because as mayor, I can't do this alone.
Right.
This is not a one-person job. This is a team effort. And we are going to have a city hall that is receptive and welcoming and out there meeting our residents, listening to our residents and our businesses, and trying to help them as much as we can, because that's what city government does.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. And when is the election?
November 4th.
4th. And Mark is here, so consider Mark Laredo.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
That was great. Yeah,